Hi, my name's Karen Schamberger. I work at the National Library of Australia in the exhibitions team. I'm here to talk about the Vivian James Carter Collection, which is going to be displayed in December from the 14th. This collection in focus display features a selection of circus-related memorabilia collected by Vivian James Carter over many years. Carter was a traditional jazz drummer who performed around Australia and Southeast Asia. He had a passion for circuses and carnivals where he had worked as a youth. The library acquired 565 items from his collection in 2015. These items include posters, programs, tickets and photographs. They provide an insight into the changes that occurred in the Australian circus industry from the early 20th to early 21st century. For more than a century until the 1960s, travelling shows like circuses were the main form of entertainment for Australians across the continent. However, between 1911 and 1996, the proportion of the population living in rural areas declined from 43% to 14%. This demographic change, plus rising transport costs and the introduction of other forms of entertainment like televisions and cinemas, contributed to the decline of the travelling circus. The 1960s and 1970s, however, witnessed the rise of a new type of circus, which focused on telling stories and on human performance. International circus troupes also began to include Australia on their world tours again. Circus arts like travelling rope walkers, jugglers, acrobats, comedians and other performers were present in ancient Greece from the 8th century BCE and later in the Roman Empire. However, the modern form of circus traces its roots to the 1700s in London. Philip Astley and his wife Patty Jones performed tricks of horsemanship in an open field, ringed with ropes and stakes in the summer of 1768. While he did not call his entertainment the circus, he made the presentation of equestrian and other exhibitions of physical skill in an enclosed arena into a new form of popular entertainment. In a few years, this developed into the institution we now call the circus. In Australia, it was Robert Avis Radford who enabled the growth of the circus industry. He emulated Astley's model of a circus and equestrian arts in December 1847 in Launceston at his own inn called the Horse and Jockey. While Vivian James Carter's collections don't contain items from circuses that date from this period, some of the earliest posters do reflect the origins of the circus in displays of horsemanship. Major American circuses and Wild West shows travelled to Australia almost every year between 1873 and 1892. They inspired the development of an Australian equivalent, which drew on the local buck jumping tradition, featuring whip cracking and sharpshooting and other skills often practised on Australian cattle stations. Thorpe McConville's Wild Australia Rodeo Circus first came into prominence in 1911 when he gave a performance for King George V at the Crystal Palace in London, just after the coronation ceremony. He then travelled to the United States, joining the 101 Ranch Wild West show. By the start of World War I, he returned home to Australia, conducting his circus rodeo performances, raising money for Australian soldiers. 19th century music halls also influenced the circus through the use of comedy and acrobats, rope dancers, jugglers and gymnasts. Different types of clowns evolved, for example, whiteface, august, which is slapstick, and tramp or hobo, which was inspired by the look of homeless people. By the 1890s, the 6 Australian colonies were experiencing a deep economic depression. American circuses were reluctant to tour overseas for fear of losing their competitive edge at home. However, individual overseas performers found work in Australian circuses. Ivan Brothers, for example, imported US artists for their single season of 1935 to 36. Their posters were based on those used by the Cooper Brothers Circus in the USA and as produced by the Donaldson's Lithograph Company. The Ivan Brothers show included ballet, which had not been included before in Australian circuses. The The ballet girls acted as ushers before the show. The orchestra played strings while people were walking in and then switched to brass during the actual program. They also had a vocalist singing during the swinging ladders act, and it was all done in coloured sawdust. Unfortunately though, the reluctance of the owner, Major Conda, to significantly invest in advertising meant that the circus did not make enough money to continue beyond one season. From the late 19th century, Australian circuses typically included wild animals. They were popular because regional areas did not have access to zoos. James Henry Ashton, a trick and bareback rider, performed with Robert Radford's Royal Circus in Launceston, Tasmania in 1848. He later performed his own circus, which continues to be run by his descendants today and is one of the longest running circuses in the world. In the 1970s, Lorraine Ashton persuaded Marcel Peters, a British wild animal trainer, to tour with the circus, which you can see here. Making a good living from circuses required having a large family. Children were sometimes adopted, apprenticed, or sold into circuses. By the age of 4, they were trained in basic skills like tumbling and soon learned riding, acrobatics, and dancing. The earlier they began learning these skills, the more adaptable and highly skilled adult performers they became. Stricter adoption and welfare legislation from the 1920s ensured that the exploitation and mistreatment of children in circuses reduced over the course of the 20th century. While the Ashtons are one of the long-standing circus families, there were many others which feature in Carter's collection. Another family is the Perry brothers family. So W.G. or Bill Perry called his circus Eroni Brothers in 1889 to distinguish it from Perry's Jubilee Circus, conducted by his brother Charles. By 1914, one of Bill's younger sons, James, left Eroni Brothers to form Perry Brothers Circus. In the late 1920s, they were Australia's largest circus after Worth's, and they were the first circus to circumnavigate Australia. Elephants were useful for loading and unloading and moving circus equipment as companies toured Australia and beyond, so they feature in a number of posters. The 4 Soul brothers joined W.G. Perry's Eroni Brothers Circus as bandsmen in 1891. Perry's daughter Mary and her husband, bandsman Bill Soul, and their children then formed the Soul Brothers Circus in 1916. In 1922, they took over Eroni Brothers. Soul Brothers Circus toured Europe, New Zealand, the Congo, South Africa, as well as Australia. In the 1870s, Bavarian musician Johannes Worth and his family, then living on the Darling Downs in Queensland, joined Ashtons Circus. In the early 1880s, sons John, Harry, Philip and George founded their own troupe. By 1887, Worth Circus was the largest in Australia, and by the 1920s, they were using the rail network to move around the continent. It performed for the last time in 1963. Bullen Brothers Circus originated with Perce Bullen's lion taming exhibitions in the 1920s. Perce Bullen and his family began their circus in 1928, performing for the last time in 1969. And this is one part of a 6-part poster. Conservators have repaired and lined this poster. They have treated the effects and extent of various mould stains. Posters such as these were intended to advertise one of Australia's largest and most successful circuses in the post-Second World War era. In 1960, Bullen Brothers Circus contracted Swiss trapeze artists Franz Gasser and René Katharina for 2 years. During this time, Gasser met Manuela, a fellow performer with Bullen's. In 1973, having married, they started Circus Royale, blending their Swiss and Portuguese family circus traditions. This poster demonstrates the incorporation of contemporary popular culture. The female lion tamer bears a resemblance to Jane Fonda in the 1968 science fiction film Barbarella. Today, no Australian circuses use exotic or wild animals in their performances. Some, however, continue to perform with domestic animals such as dogs, horses and goats. From the 1960s, when the use of wild animals became controversial, circuses shifted focus to human performances, emphasising physicality and storytelling. While continuing to feature traditional circus acts, Circus Oz and other new companies have incorporated elements of popular music, mainstream theatre and satire. Circus Oz performers worked with traditional circuses such as Ashtons and Circus Royale, learning about touring and other aspects of circus management and performance. Other more community-based companies have created training programs for young people to improve their skills and build self-esteem. Since 1965, numerous international circuses have toured Australia, influencing local acts and audience expectations. For instance, Father Jesus Silva founded the first Benposta city in Spain in 1956. So-called Benposta cities, commonly known as City of Youth, originally had no adults and operated democratically on the principle of equality of all residents. Each Benposta had a government or council elected by every member of the community, even the youngest children. The council then made decisions about the maintenance of the community. In 1966, the School of Acrobatic and Circus Art opened in Benposta, which was the first circus school in Spain. It trained children and teenagers from all over the world to perform in the new circus called Circo de los Muchachos. It was a way that Benposta could promote its philosophy and messages as it toured around the world. They arrived in Australia in 1975 and toured Australia under Ashtons and Channel 7 banner. The performers aged between 9 and 24 included trained acrobats, jugglers, magicians, clowns, high wire and aerial artists. Some of these performers decided to stay in Australia, including Brazil Rodriguez, José Falagan and Chino, who all married into the Ashton circus family and who all continue to run and perform with the Ashton Entertainment Company to the present day. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. You're welcome to see these items and more from the Vivian James Carter Collection in the Circus Roll-Up exhibition at the National Library from the 14th of December 2021.